When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like aloe or skins, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and brilliant marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers, buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. Nobody does selling better than Shopify. With Shop Pay, that boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts are going abandoned and way more sales happening. So if you're into growing your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell whatever your customers are scrolling or strolling on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more, sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Skins uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Westwood1, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Westwood1 to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/Westwood1.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
Doesn't matter if you're an Indian or if you're a Warhawk.
The Ulan mention is the greatest. You'd hope for the best as a Ulan fan, but
this is the Bleav in the Warhawks podcast with hosts Dusty Thibodeaux and Chase Regian.
Chase, you always have such great insight.
Tibbs is going to bleep it all.
What are these guys always talking about?
We talk a lot about food on this podcast, and I'm going to continue to do so.
Really, really appreciative of the people and the community and the way that they've backed us up.
Nailed the introduction, by the way. Awesome.
Thanks,
I love
Fish.
it.
Chase, we're back for another one. Another preview episode. This time, it's for our game going to Natchitoches, Louisiana, right?
That's what I think some fans will think, yeah.
Oh,
yeah, some Louisianians will.
I really hope that everyone's like, man, I'm going to this game. It's driving distance. It's going to be fantastic. They show up. I hadn't even looked to see if Northwestern does have a game on that day. You know, maybe they're playing McNeese or Southeastern, and they get even more confused about it.
Wouldn't that be great? A bunch of Maroons shows up in their stadium. That'd be awesome, dude.
I mean, Turpin Stadium, they need some love as well. You know, it's a nice field. It's a nice field.
It is. It's a cool little town for sure.
I still miss the days, though, of their rivalry there with Stephen F., where they had the Chief. He was a big 6'6" wooden Indian that they would transfer back and forth of whoever won the game.
Yeah, it turns out maybe a little racist, but it was. I do enjoy looking back at some of those old rivalries like that.
So, obviously, the big news: Louisiana Tech's in. It's been a while since we kicked off and played them in football.
Yeah.
We need a rivalry for them. What should that trophy or that game name be?
I'm sure they're going to be really boring and say like the Battle of I-20 or I don't know. I mean, how do you fight a shitty bulldog with a Warhawk? I'm not sure how those match up. Like, so you can't fight mascots, you know what I mean? To roads.
Well, ours is a plane. I mean, we'll bomb him and he'll be done.
Yeah, but okay, that's not the point. The point is, like, how do they fight? Is my point. You're killing me. I don't know. You call it something. You name it. They're probably going to run with whatever you name it anyways. You were Corey Crow.
Why Corey Crow?
I don't know. I feel like Corey just gets slid in there sometimes.
I'll tell you what, guys. Here's what we're going to call it.
Here's what we're going to go.
Well, to give us the preview, that is the game that is not in Natchitoches, Louisiana, but instead in Evanston, Illinois. It'll be the third Big Ten opponent that the Warhawks will face, having faced off against Minnesota and Iowa. We now get to add the Northwestern Wildcats to that slate. Matt Shelton of WildcatReport, part of the On3 network, joins us. Matt, welcome in. I bet you were so confused about us talking about Natchitoches, Louisiana, and Northwestern.
Oh no, I know about the the Southern Northwestern to add one more
Come on.
Cardinal direction in there.
That makes
Yeah,
me
when
so
I rode club crew in college, and they were at one of the same spring break training spots as we were. So we all laughed about it. But yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. Glad to be on.
Wildcats, Demons, it's all the same.
Both purple, right?
Yeah, they're both purple.
Yeah. Why would they do that?
We're
That's so
practically
weird.
What's the difference?
Yeah, they say Northwestern State's like the private research institution that's around Chicago. They say they're very close institutions.
So, Matt, when the Warhawks get ready to face off against Northwestern this year, this team, I did some research on them. They do have a quarterback that's coming back of Jack Lausch, I think is how you say it. But they also have the SMU transfer, Preston Stone. How do you kind of see this offense taking shape, and who's going to be behind center really taking the snaps to lead the Wildcats?
Yeah, the overwhelming favorite for that is going to be Preston. He's coming in, didn't have the season he wanted to for SMU, obviously, last year, coming off a serious injury, ended up losing the job to Kevin Jennings. I don't think that was necessarily something that he did wrong. I think that's just an example of good versus great. When you have a playoff caliber quarterback guy like Jennings, it sucks, but that's the choice you got to make over a veteran local guy like Stone. But based on what we heard throughout spring and heading into summer, this is pretty much Stone's job. Head coach David Braun hasn't come out and said it, but Stone is one of the team reps for media days. And then also there's the baseball angle for Jack Lausch, which is pretty big. MLB draft just wrapped up earlier today. He didn't get picked, but he's been consistently more and more spending his time working on that side of things. He was kind of originally listed as a dual sport athlete this winter. He was a potential MLB prospect out of high school, ended up instead choosing to be a scholarship football player at Northwestern. Didn't pick up a bat for 3 years. Then after last season, when seems like behind the scenes there were some conversations with the coaches of they're like, hey, we want to bring a transfer in to at the very least compete next season. He decided to pick up a bat again and start working on baseball. Had a good season, and he's been in. The crux of the matter is that he missed some of spring ball. He missed probably a handful, maybe more practices traveling with the baseball team. And that was kind of a signal of, again, maybe on a lower level, kind of a similar premise to how it worked with Stone and Jennings at SMU of like, it's not that they don't like the guy or they don't, that there's any kind of locker room issues. It's just a situation of, they brought in a guy they think has a really high ceiling and that he can really compete to set a tone for them as a consistent starter. And from Lausch's perspective, I think if he had a message from the coaching staff that was potentially an even battle, taking on baseball again probably isn't something that happens. When you're in that, you don't want to take a single spring practice off. And then he's also playing in the MLB draft league this summer. So we'll see how that plays out. Will definitely be a question for us around from the media, us as the media to David Braun at media days is kind of what's the status there. I think my personal guess is Lausch is probably going to be playing baseball somewhere, either trying to work as an undrafted free agent, work his way up through, single A, double A ball, or potentially he got his degree from Northwestern in June. So potentially maybe even looking to play one more season of college baseball somewhere. But that's kind of the lay of the quarterback land for Northwestern. I think nominally it might be a battle, but as the spring wore on, I think it became pretty clear that it's good. If he's healthy, it's going to be Stone's job.
Well, Lausch's stats aren't too much to be desired, so I'm sure you're excited about a new quarterback transfer. You kind of mentioned that you were in charge of recruiting and transfer or reporting on recruiting and transfers. Anybody else that Northwestern got that we should know about or that anybody watching Northwestern should look out for?
Yeah, from the transfer portal direction, it was a really big shift for Northwestern. In the past, they had very strict academic rules, because they're on maybe a little more in the weeds than you guys are looking for, but because they're on because they're on an academic quarter system, their winter quarter starts like first week of January. So that's normally like January 4th through like 5th, 6th, 7th range. And so if you can't get a guy in by then they can't play for spring ball, or at least for the first half of spring ball. And so I'm sure you guys know that's you got to work quickly on that window. And in the past, that was basically entirely off limits from admissions, was that they're like, we're not processing athletic transfers in that quick a time. That got basically an exemption this season, where they said, if you can get commits before this time, we will provide an expedited assessment process. So they got Stone, and then I would say probably the two other big guys on offense, or I'll say three big guys on offense coming in they have Griffin Wilde, who's going to be their presumptive wide receiver 1. He's coming in from South Dakota State. And then two key offensive lineman additions are Evan Bjornson from South Dakota State. He's probably going to start at one of the guard positions. And then they have Xavier Gray in from Liberty. He was all CUSA last year. He'll be the presumptive starter at right tackle. And then probably the best returning talent on the team is the other tackle, left tackle, Caleb Tiernan. He has real NFL buzz and excitement. He's an absolute mountain of a man. He's like 6'7", 330. He is the latest in the recent line of Northwestern left tackles, going back to Rashawn Slater, Peter Skoronski. I mean, Peter ended up moving to guard in the NFL, but I don't know if he'll be a top 10 pick, but there is real pro potential for Tiernan there. So he's made another guy up front, kind of on the offense to watch.
Yeah, I love that Northwestern, as many people know or may not know, that they just produce offensive linemen like crazy. And as a former offensive lineman, Matt, makes me super happy. Would have been a very cool place, very excited. Very cool.
That's Big Ten overall. I mean,
that's very true. That's very true.
Yeah, I will say
it's South Dakota State kids, that's cool.
Yeah, one of their issues kind of in the past years has been having one or two of those guys, but the whole unit hasn't been as competent or cohesive as they would like. Again, Slater and Skoronski are unbelievable. I mean, you can't build a better tackle than those guys were in their last college years, but they went 3-9 in Slater's last year, and they went 1-11 in Skoronski's last year. So I think they're hoping to build more groups better going forward than having those singular talents, but having those singular guys with those incredible resumes and playing on Sundays definitely helps them in the recruiting space.
Well, I know when I think of the Big Ten, I think of running football. I think of lineman battles. And for anybody that doesn't know what to expect when you're playing Northwestern, what kind of offense do you run? Are you going to be a dominant defensive team? Or are you going to be a run the ball, time clock team? That's who ULM was last year, so that would be a boring ass game. But is that who you want to be? Is that who you think Northwestern wants to be?
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. They have a penchant for playing some, as you said, some more boring games. They beat Miami, Ohio 13-6 last year, I think it is. And that was kind of the same thing of the offense was still really struggling, so the defense just sat on them the whole game. And I think one of the issues with last season's offense, which really struggled, it ranked in the 120s nationally, which is never – whenever you see an offensive stat and you're like, oh, I didn't know there were that many teams in FBS, that's never a good sign. And Northwestern had a few of those numbers last season. But a lot of that started up front, and they really struggled to find consistency on the offensive line. They had 9 different guys. I Bleav they had 9 different players start on the offensive line last season. And that kind of never really gave them a solid base to work with, because in a vacuum, also coming from South Dakota State is the offensive coordinator, Zach Lujan's, in his second season. And they were very much a run-focused team there. They really like to establish the tone, control the pace of play, whole 9 yards there. And at Northwestern, the athletic disparity between what they have and their opponent, that shifts drastically from South Dakota State, where, they're kind of the big bad of that division. And then now you go back into more of an underdog type role in the Big Ten. So there were some real growing pains there. They made a lot of, again, with some of the offensive line moves I mentioned earlier, they've made a lot of moves up front to shore that up this offseason. That's probably been their number one target. So I think they want to establish the run. I think that's definitely what they're looking for in a vacuum. If Zach Lujan got to run the system he wanted with the personnel he, could dream of, but they are also setting themselves up with a guy who has real high-level pocket passer potential in Preston Stone. If he's healthy, he threw his last healthy season at SMU. He threw for nearly 3,200 yards and 28 touchdowns. And again, that's G5 competition before SMU went to the ACC. But, if he can replicate anything close to that, then they're going to have to shift their pace of play. But I think under David Braun, their general consistent theme has been, more run heavy, controlling the pace of play on offense, and then letting your defense force opponents into mistakes.
On the defensive side of the ball, who are some big names to look out for, and what's kind of that defense look like? Is that a 3-man, 4-man front, or?
Yeah, they're generally a base nickel. Generally, I think they're generally a 4-2-5 set. Generally, 4 down guys, 2 linebackers. I'd say probably the number one guy to watch for, probably the second highest guy with pro potential on the roster behind Tiernan is Anto Saka. He's been a pass rush specialist over the past 3 seasons. And really when he's healthy, he's had game-changing speed. When you looked early in the season last year, when he was playing Miami of Ohio, when he was playing Duke, he really shaped the course of those games. He's really, this sounds like a pretty straightforward analysis, but he's just really fast. He just has blazing speed off the edge. In the past, the issue with him is when they can get him on the field, just because he's not the biggest or most physical DN. He hasn't had every down size in the past. I think he's trending in that direction this offseason. And so he's probably the guy, if he's healthy, most likely to pop off your screen for moving at a different pace than everybody else is going to be Saka at defensive end. Best every down defender is probably Mike linebacker Mac Uline, who's kind of, again, comparing back to left tackles, the latest in the line of Northwestern linebackers. Uline was every down last year when he was healthy. Really great linebacker, captain of the defense. He's the hub. He's the you name it. And then on the backside, again, another every down guy that you'll want to keep an eye on is going to be Damon Walters at safety. He was a guy last year. They had 2 experienced veterans, Coco Azama and Devin Turner. And when they started to have some injury issues, Walters basically started to work his way to the rotation, and the coaches couldn't find a reason to take him off the field. And it basically, by the end of the season, turned into Walters as a starter and those other 2 guys rotating, which was a huge shock if you told me that was going to happen preseason. But, he's been that good. I think they see him as a sky's the limit player. Same with Saka. And then, again, Mac Uline is a pretty solid college middle linebacker.
For fans wanting more than just the score, Warhawk Report dives deeper into ULM athletics with expert analysis, recruiting updates, behind-the-scenes access, and real-time updates. Whether you are a diehard fan or just curious about the Warhawks, we've got you covered. Subscribe today at warhawkreport.com. Smart coverage, real insights, all Warhawks. warhawkreport.com.
This episode brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can get a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help find you options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
If you're running a business right now, you already know it's hard. Tight budgets, hiring freezes, economic uncertainty is just the beginning. Good news. Upwork is helping small businesses do more with less. Freelancers on Upwork cost less than hiring full-time or going through a staffing agency. Never tried Upwork? Well, now's the perfect time because they're giving our listeners a $200 credit after spending $1,000 in your first 30 days. That's $200 you could put toward your next freelancer, design help, AI automation, admin support, marketing, whatever your business needs. Visit Upwork.com/save right now for this great offer. That's Upwork.com/save to get a $200 credit to put towards your next freelancer to help grow your business. That's UPWORK.com/SAVE. Upwork.com/save. Don't wait. This offer is only valid through June 24th through August 5th, 2025.
4-8 overall last year for Northwestern. What's the expectations coming into this year? Do you feel that it's another subpar year, or do you feel that it's like 2 years ago where they went 8-5 overall?
I think probably middle ground. I think the aspiration in the program is that they want to make a bowl game. I think that's out there. I think you guys mentioned on your preview pod about how you'll know pretty quick into the season what you guys are made of, and I think that's pretty similar for Northwestern. We were talking about a little bit before the show of opening at Tulane. That's going to be your litmus test right there of if they can go into New Orleans at a historically very well-coached, competent team that was a bowl team last year. If they can go in and win that game, then I think they can go forward, really being really thinking that they can be postseason competitive and really start to press that advantage of let's start to get towards 6 or 7 wins and start thinking about winning a bowl game. If they lose that game, they're on the clock because they just have some modern Big Ten opponents that are just certainties. It's like, you never want to say never, but they host Oregon, they play at Penn State. Unless there's divine intervention, those are 2 teams that want to win a national title this year. They play Michigan, they play at Illinois. Those are 2 teams that want to make the playoffs. So they have a really tough schedule. The conference as it's currently set up is really competitive, especially at the top end, and they get no favors from the schedule makers in that one, especially as Illinois, which is their protected game, as Illinois has turned themselves from a pretty below average Big Ten team to now they're, again, like I just said, now they want to be playoff competitive. That's tough to have that game go from a game that they're pretty much locking in as a win for most of the past decade or so. And then now it's, if anything, it's flipped the other way. Again, they won an awesome game at Champaign, 45-43 in David Braun's first year, but the game at Wrigley was not as close as the scoreboard says last year, and I think potentially they're heading that way this year. But long route to answer your question is that I think their expectation is that they can be bowl game competitive. If Stone is the guy he was when he's healthy at SMU, that will really open up what the defense can do. Chase, I think you mentioned about Jack Lausch's stats maybe not flying off the page. The really telling stat from Northwestern last season is that when they had a quarterback throw for 200 plus yards, which is pretty baseline, that is pretty much like, hey, if you're a college quarterback, that's what you should be doing. They had that 6 times. They went 3-3. When they went below 200, they went 1-5. So, and that's been pretty much the case all throughout Braun's tenure and also historically at Northwestern, is that when you can get baseline quarterback play, just at like league average play at that position, they've had the defenses to back it up and be a bowl team. When they haven't, that's when the wheels fall off and the floor falls out. But I think they can be in that position this year if Stone pans out.
Yeah, also got sacked 22 times last year, which kind of reinforces your point about the O-line. And that's a brutal stat to hear, I'm sure. When I think of Northwestern, I think of a lot of tradition. I think of a lot of history. And I want to know from your perspective, we talk a lot on this podcast about how ULM can be really competitive within our conference and how we are normally on the bottom of our conference. Oh, that hurts to say, or towards the bottom quarter. I'm not going to say Northwestern is, but it feels like you guys could have the tools to be in the top tier of your conference and maybe push for the national title like the top Big Ten teams are. What do you think that Northwestern needs to do to get to that point?
I think a national title would be, I mean, that's very, very far down the road here. In terms of what needs to change, I think it's pretty basic, but I think the answer is basically just how they're using their finances. Their NIL budget has been increasingly competitive. I think they like where they're at this year of being, they project to be a top half team in terms of NIL spend. And I think they especially like where they're at in terms of revenue share if they plan to fully fund that number and have, this is just me projecting. This isn't sourced, but I feel like most teams that are fully funding the 20 million end up around 14, 15 for football. And I think they probably want to be in the same spot. So I think in that respect, they like where they are. I think at especially with the way the Big Ten set up now, just speaking candidly, I don't think there's a way that they would be able to play for a conference title the way that they had in the past. They won the Big Ten West in 2018, 2020. And then now you have to be one of the top 2 teams in Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, Michigan, list goes on. I mean, I just think right there, those 4 teams with how they spend and with their histories, I don't think that I'll just be honest, I don't think if you put Nick Saban or whoever at Northwestern, that with the current landscape that they could win the Big Ten or win a national title. I don't think that's in the cards. I do think they definitely have an angle towards using their stability, just kind of building slow and steady and starting to put together top half finishes in the conference. To answer the question directly, I think Northwestern's goal and aspiration in a modern Big Ten for football should be a top half conference finish.
Man,
but I think if they want to, sorry, go ahead.
I said, what a great, honest answer.
Yeah, because I just think, especially if they want to maintain academic standards, and for instance, they have not paid signing bonuses to high school players. They have had a baseline pay once you arrive on campus of freshman football players from the NIL collective earn X amount. That's existed, but when people start to have the conversation of how can Northwestern compete for, high 4 stars or 4 stars in the Chicago area, right? Because that is, I'm sure the recruiting conversation happens a lot in Louisiana of if you can just recruit your backyard, then the world is your oyster. And Northwestern has a similar principle with Chicago. But the issue is that if you don't have the high level of history that some of these other programs do, if you're going after a Chicago 4-star, you're competing with Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio, sometimes Ohio State. In addition to it's an increasingly national landscape, Alabama has, Max Sutter goes to Dunlap, but USC has a couple of the best kids from Chicago this year. Colorado got another player from Chicago this year. It's an increasingly national landscape. And if you're not going to pay for players, then you're not going to stay competitive or get competitive at that high end. So I do think there is an angle for Northwestern to, as Braun has said in the past, to out team people. If they want to go slow and steady, wins the race, fully fund their rev share, build a strong foundation, work really hard on their retention. I think it's really impressive that they have Tiernan back, that they have Saka back. Those are guys I'm absolutely positive got huge offers from other schools, but they were able to retain. So I think if they go with that model, again, I think you can go top half. In terms of going back to the days of, again, they've been able to play for a Big Ten title multiple times in the last 10 years. I just don't see a world where that happens again. That there's just too much money and too much history at other places in the conference.
Looking down the schedule, right there between your home game against UCLA and an away game against Penn State, it's a 3-letter team, ULM. When you saw that on there, were you like, who the hell is this and why are they coming to Evanston?
Well, I'll be honest. I was not like, who the hell is this? Because when I was growing up, you guys were one of my favorite teams to play Dynasty with because I thought the mascot was awesome. But
it is.
I'm sure you guys get that all the time. But So
Yeah,
I
'cause
didn't know who
we
you
were the
all
worst in the
was.
game, and then you had to pick us and then try to build it back. We know why you did it. You don't have to act like it was the mascot.
No, I love because it's the Warhawks. My high school was the Skyhawks, so I always thought that was the coolest thing in the world. So yeah, I didn't know who ULM was. I did have I will be honest, I have not watched ULM play before live. Like I haven't tuned in on TV to see you guys play. I'll probably try to do some background more this year before the game comes around. But yeah, I mean, I think it's Northwestern's homecoming game this year. So I think there will be plenty of bulletin board material for you guys in that respect. But I think Braun so far in his tenure has done a good job of he's 4-0 in his non-Power 5 non-conference games. You know, he has done there have been some close calls. You know, they beat Howard 23-20, but he's done a good job of not letting his players look past these games. So I don't think there'll be much of that angle, but definitely will be a sigh of relief for them on the schedule a little bit, especially when you're looking at going at Penn State the next week.
So for fans making the trip up to, it's not Chicago, it's Evanston. About what is
thousands
it,
of fans that will just go.
Yeah,
we travel great, Matt.
It's what, like 30 minutes north of Chicago? Is that correct?
I'd say probably more like 45. You can take the Purple Line train right up, Red Line to Purple. That'll be about 45 minutes. The drive is very variable. I mean, on a Saturday, yeah, probably like 45 minutes to an hour from downtown.
Are you referring to public transportation?
I am, yes.
We don't really have that, so you got to talk real low down to us. Well, so most people, I'm sure, will stay in Chicago. I'm sorry, Tibbs, did I interrupt your question? That was only half your question.
No, that's all I had for that.
Oh,
roll on.
Yeah. Hold on. I was just going to ask. So, I don't know if people will know what to do if they go to Chicago, but when they go into the campus area, what are some big things they got to hit? We're a big food podcast, Matt, so I would say start with food and maybe some attractions, some things we got to see while we're on the northern part of this beautiful country.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really, again, not to pat them too hard on the back, I do think it's a really beautiful campus. It's right on Lake Michigan. It's a little weird for this season and last in terms of recommendations, just because it's relocated. Of the past spot where they played at Ryan Field, that's currently under construction. So that is in the past kind of been where all the food and drink recommendations are. Now it's gone to a temporary stadium on campus built around the practice field. So there isn't necessarily, I mean, again, you guys can't really get into a dining hall, but that's the nearest place where you would be able to get food.
Me, Matt. Don't doubt me.
But I would say if you're looking for food recommendations, you have Tomate on Noyes Street, which is basically that's perpendicular to the stadium and probably like a 10-minute walk. That's great Mexican. If you are by where the old stadium used to be, the traditional food spot there is Mustard's Last Stand. That's like burgers, hot dogs, etc. And there are a couple breweries and bar spots for you there. If you are more downtown Evanston, I would say that Bat 17 is probably the place to go. That is, again, more of like a bar and grill that has like burgers, sandwiches, beer. That's the spot.
So you're telling me I asked a guy from the Chicago area where to go eat, Matt. You told me Mexican food. It was a softball to say, here's where you get the best hot dog in town.
I think that's Mustard.
Chicago dogs are the thing, right?
Okay, like, because if it was the old spot, that absolutely would have been number one. But it's like that's probably like a 20-minute walk from the stadium where it is now. If that is the goal,
you're talking to a fat guy. Am I going to be walking around this entire place? Because I do not want to do that.
Are there birds, limes, or anything like that around?
Yeah, scooters. I'll get on those scooters.
I think those might be students only.
Oh, dude, this place stinks already, Tibbs. I don't even.
You're saying that we should have stuck with the original game at Nebraska and not traded over for Northwestern.
I was going to say, I'm sure that's much easier. I'm sure everything's much closer together at UNL.
What else do we need to know as we get ready for the Week 6 matchup there against Northwestern there, Matt?
It's just going to be an interesting – we kind of talked about this on the pre-show. I think per usual at this point in the season, this is where injuries are really going to sway things. And I think especially with Northwestern's schedule, like I mentioned about the Tulane game kind of being a fulcrum game, they have another – UCLA is kind of a similar situation of where I think they need to be going into this game at worst 2-2, hopefully 3-1, because if they have Oregon and then a bye week and then UCLA. And if the Oregon game is bad and they're able to beat UCLA, I think they come into this game, pretty ready and pretty aggressive. If they're 3-1 or 2-2, I think this is probably no offense, I think this is probably a 75 to 80% chance that Northwestern gets a win at home. But I think there's also a world
that number heavily by ESPN standards. I said I'm sure you're undershooting that number heavily by ESPN standards.
Okay. But I also think, there's a world where the season and the coaches start to feel a ton of pressure really early. If you want to talk about the Warhawk dream scenario, that's very real, is that Northwestern can be 1-3 going into this game. And, there's a real chance of they lose a tight one at Tulane. I mean, if they lose to Western Illinois, then they're folding the team, season's over, whatever. So we're marking that down as a win for now. But, if Oregon comes in and they decide to make a statement and they want to win by 60, and if they're able to do that and really make a statement, and then now there's a lot riding on that UCLA game. And if that goes the wrong way and they're 1-3, then I think you guys have a chance to put the team on tilt. But I also think that they're pretty motivated and they should be able to get into this at 2-2, if not 3-1.
I think that's it, man. Matt, you did a great job of explaining what to look forward to, man. Except for food, terrible answer, but the rest of it was really great. No, hey, man,
Matt,
thanks so much for your time tonight. Oh, go ahead. No, Tibbs was about to do that. Damn it.
Yes, it's that much of a cluster.
Yeah.
Matt, can't thank you enough for stopping by. Tell everybody where they can hear more about Northwestern as we get ready for this season.
Our site is Northwestern's On3 site. So you can obviously navigate there from the main one. Otherwise, it's on3.com/sites/wildcat-report. On Twitter, I am M_Shelton33. And then my publisher I work with, Louis Vicaire, he's at Wildcat Report. So looking forward to it.
Life is a workout, and Smoothie King is here to help you power through. Whether you're grinding out bicep curls or muscling the couch across the living room, crushing morning miles, or sprinting through back-to-back meetings, Smoothie King has fuel to help you maximize your workouts, own your recovery, and elevate your game. Give your body the energy, protein, and power it needs with a lineup of delicious smoothies made to help you conquer your goals. Only at Smoothie King.
Shop the Sherwin-Williams July Summer Sale and get 30% off paints and stains July 18th through the 28th. With prices starting at $34.29, it's the perfect time to transform your space with color. Whether you're looking to revamp your interior or exterior, we have you covered with bold hues, soothing neutrals, and everything in between. Visit your neighborhood Sherwin-Williams store or shop the sale online. Delivery available on qualifying orders. Click the banner to learn more. Retail sales only. Some exclusions apply. See store for details.
Going to the gym can be discouraging, especially if you're putting in the work but barely seeing changes. But with Tonal, you can actually see your progress with every workout. Tonal provides the convenience of a full gym and the expertise of a personal trainer anytime at home with one sleek system. Designed to reduce your mental load, Tonal is the ultimate strength training system, helping you focus less on workout planning and more on getting results. No more second-guessing your technique. Tonal gives you real-time coaching cues to dial in your form and help you lift safely safely and effectively. After a quick assessment, Tonal sets the optimal weight for every move and adjusts in 1 pound increments as you get stronger, so you're always challenged. Tonal lets you choose from a variety of expert-led workouts, from strength to aero hit to yoga and mobility, to keep you coming back for more. For a limited time, go to Tonal.com to get $500 off your Tonal purchase, plus a free 4-year warranty. That's Tonal.com for $500 off, plus a free 4-year warranty. Tonal.com.